You're listening to The Secrets of Sacred Art, where we unearth the hidden treasures, history, and deeper meanings in religious and sacred art. We're your hosts, Alix Murray
and Kathryn Laffrey. Welcome to episode 17, Our Lady of Walsingham, Hidden in Plain Sight. Be sure to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast app, or on the StarQuest YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you can watch the show and see all the visuals. In this episode, we'll explore the beautiful statue Our Lady of Walsingham, her tragic history, and the possibility of the silent victory. Come with us on this really exciting adventure across medieval Catholic England, through the bloody years of the Reformation, right up to modern London and beyond. Alix, you want to tell us about this wonderful treasure you have?
Yes. I'm so excited about this because I just have a really special devotion to Our Lady of Walsingham. So I hope I do her proud. I hope we do her proud today. So just to give you a little bit of the history of Walsingham, in 1061, a noble woman by the name of Lady Rocheldis de Faverges received visions of the Mother of God, instructing her to build a replica of the House of the Annunciation, also known as the Holy House, on her property to aid in the piety of the English people. This vision was one of the earliest recorded Marian apparitions. In it, Lady Rocheldis was flown to the Holy Land to take measurements of the original Holy House, which is described as a wooden structure, in order to build an exact replica in England. This replica was the site of a pilgrimage for centuries. Our Lady promised, "Whosoever seeks my help there, will not go away empty-handed." And this is a beautiful icon from the, I believe this is from the Anglican pilgrimage site at Walsingham.
Oh, okay.
And around it, so it says, "All who are distressed or in any need, let them seek me here in that little house you have made in Walsingham. To all that seek me there, I will give my help." And I love this because it is actually consistent with something someone said to me about Our Lady of Walsingham, and I just want to encourage people to kind of think about this and why she's so special. This lady said, if ever you have troubles, if you're worried about children or your spouse or yourself or any family member, whatever distresses really that you might have, if you look at the statue of Our Lady of Walsingham, she's got a nice big lap, like a big mama's lap. And she said, you just crawl up onto that lap, sit across from baby Jesus, and she'll take care of it. And I love that image, that maternal, strong, always there, always safe image of Our Lady of Walsingham. And that's exactly who she was to the English people for many, many centuries. Yeah, so now, according to early recordings, according to the early recording of the event of this miraculous trip to the Holy Land and taking measurements of the house, that was recorded in the Pinson Ballad from 1485. Pinson was one of the first printers, I believe, in England once the printing press had been invented. So it was deemed important enough to write down this ballad. So the ballad was probably older, but the fact that, so when it was printed out, then more people could have access to it. And there were some issues. So according to that ballad, there were some issues around where Our Lady had requested the building to be placed. And because she wanted it to be placed on kind of unstable, boggy ground. But the workers were like, actually, it would probably be better over there. And when they tried to build it in the site that was just a little bit away from it, nothing went together. All the pieces that they had cut and measured wouldn't go together. Excuse me. And so they were just exhausted. And so according to so they just left it overnight. Like, we're all tired. Let's figure out what we're going to do tomorrow morning. So to quote an excerpt from Wikipedia, one night, Rocheldis heard singing and went out to her garden, where she found that the little house had been completed about 200 yards from the site of the original construction. And Rocheldis saw what she took to be angels leaving the now completed house. So the angels took up so it's kind of cool. But that's the legend behind
sounds like a good patron for architects.
Yes, Our Lady of Walsingham. Absolutely. Do you know what I think is interesting is that Lady Rocheldis has never been canonized. And apparently she was an incredibly saintly woman. She's never been canonized. Not that I could see, which kind of surprised me. But anyway, so she was a friend to the poor. She was a patron of very devout, devoted to Our Lady. So I don't know why she never was declared a saint. Who knows?
We didn't want to outshine Our Lady.
That's it. See, all the more reason. Yeah, there you go. And so her family supported the Holy House until around 1146, when the responsibility was handed over to the canons regular of the Augustinian order. And they kind of supported the pilgrims coming and held masses and everything there up until the Reformation. So from the time of its foundation to the Reformation in 1529, the Shrine of Walsingham was frequented by the faithful as often as pilgrims visited Glastonbury, Canterbury, Rome, and the Santiago de Compostela. And it was especially popular during times of war and upheaval for people to go to, because sometimes these holy sites were difficult to get to, but Walsingham, for some reason, was always kind of safe for people to come and do pilgrimages. So people would come from all over Europe. And it was known early on as England's Nazareth.
Ah, okay.
Because, of course, it is the site of the Annunciation. So this is their version of it. And there are a couple of interesting sites like that around the country. I know on the island of Iona, they've uncovered, they've done a lot of archaeological digging, and they've discovered a Little Jerusalem, which is actually like a miniature version of the city of Jerusalem. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
So if we want to look at, I guess, another slide, we have, so this was the Slipper Chapel. These are some images of the Slipper Chapel, and this was built in the 14th century. And it kind of, after the Reformation, a lot of this was, a lot of the relics and the treasures of the church were destroyed and taken away. Mm. And what's interesting is, during World War II, many Americans who were based in the UK took an interest in Walsingham because it had kind of fallen out of favor. I wouldn't say falling out of favor, but people kind of forgot about it. And so during World War II, this is kind of how interesting, this is how things happen sometimes in the great story of history. So American soldiers came over. They were interested in Walsingham and its importance to Catholic history. And through their own efforts, they celebrated the first Catholic Mass on the priory grounds since the Reformation on the 17th of May, 1945. And I have to say, there's an excellent documentary on the history of Walsingham from EWTN Great Britain, which we will link in the show notes, and it is worth watching. And it's going to give you a lot more interesting details about Walsingham as a pilgrimage site, because we're going to be concentrating on something very specific about Walsingham that's connected to Walsingham. But Kathryn, you had some interesting information that you discovered about the influence of Walsingham on the U.S., which I was not aware of, and maybe our listeners and viewers may or may not be aware of it either. But so why don't you share with us some of the things you discovered about Walsingham?
Yeah, well, I found it interesting. I had never heard of Our Lady of Walsingham until you had shared several years ago the statue that you have, which is very similar to the one that's in this image on the left here in the red frame. And, doing some research and looking on the Liturgical Arts Journal, they do a wonderful job finding beautiful churches. And this is Holy Family in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. And if you look at the facade of this church, I'm going to flip back real quick to our previous slide. And you look at the facade here of the Slipper Chapel.
Yeah.
The architect who did Holy Family in St. Louis, in his sketches and descriptions, which they have in I think it's the University of Minnesota's libraries now, they actually have notes in them about how he intentionally designed Holy Family in St. Louis Park, Minnesota to look like the Slipper Chapel. And this was built in 1960. So it's
amazing.
An old style in a new time period. But this architect and his firm, they were very strongly in favor of the Gothic style as being one of the ultimates as far as architectural style goes. And then with their, connection visually to Our Lady of Walsingham, they have the statue within the church.
Yeah. It's really beautiful, isn't it? Now, was that statue done in the 1960s as well? Or do you know?
It would have been shortly after. They have early photos, and I'll put a link to this article. Great photos in here. And if you ever need to find anything about liturgical art journal is the place to go.
Yeah,
but, a lot of great photos.
It's a dangerous place to look.
It is a dangerous place to go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's got so many beautiful things. So many beautiful things in that journal. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just
what
amazing.
A beautiful church.
She's popping up all over the place.
She is. She's everywhere.
She's everywhere.
Yeah.
All right.
Beautiful.
Where are you going to take us next, Alix?
Okay. So, an image of Our Lady of Walsingham was made in the 13th century and placed in the chapel for veneration. King Edward III gifted the statue with a gold crown, which was attached with a band around the head of the statue. And Erasmus visited the chapel in 1513 and described the statue as follows. He said, "When you look in, you would say it is the abode of saints. So brilliantly does it shine with gems, gold and silver. Our Lady stands in the dark at the right side of the altar, a little image, remarkable neither for its size, material, or workmanship." And now this image of Our Lady of Walsingham is actually a statue that we have in our home, and it was given to us by a priest friend, and I'll go into a little more detail about that later on. But just I wanted to give people an idea of how it looked. And this is actually, I have to say, one of the most beautiful pieces of art that I have, and I absolutely love it. And have spent many, many hours praying in front of this statue of Our Lady. And just, it is a replica, obviously. And so, but what happened?
Do you still have it in the same place in your house? Do you still have it in your stairwell? Or
yeah. I guess it's called the mezzanine. It's like the mezzanine kind of landing. Yeah. And she's she's like in the center of the house, right at the top. And and it's, as I said, it's such an extraordinary statue. And but what happened around during the Reformation? According to some records, by order of St. Thomas Cromwell, Walsingham was subject to what was called the Valor Ecclesiasticus, which was basically an audit. So the government wanted to go in and see what the how much money the Augustinians had and how much property and gold and everything, because they would go in and like accuse them of doing various things, and then they would just confiscate everything. And because some of the canons were afraid that their property was going to be confiscated by the government, they plotted to hide as much of their wealth and goods as possible. And they weren't the only ones to do this, because not a lot of people I think know about the monasteries, convents, and churches being raided by King Henry VIII. But I didn't know until a few years back that he also raided the guilds. So, because the guilds were incredibly wealthy and they were very powerful. And so he actually destroyed the guilds in this country as well, which is a shame. So, yeah, I know. It's just, yes, exactly.
Let's start an artist
saying nothing else. Oh my gosh, I know. So as a result of, and people, the guilds and the churches, if they got wind of this, if they could, they really would try to hide things. And that's kind of where our story is going. But as a result of the priors' attempts to hide their stuff, or the monks, 11 of the monks were executed, and the sub-prior was actually hanged outside the priory walls. And this is what happened. This is when the original statue of Our Lady of Walsingham was then reportedly taken to Lambeth in London and burned. This was the fate of so many English statues, Catholic statues, and art. So the sad thing about this is, so much of English Catholic art that was unique to this country, styles that developed in this country, were absolutely destroyed. And so it's just been lost. And so every once in a while you find little bits and pieces, but trying to put it together is really difficult, because, this was not just taking the robbery of money and property. This was the destruction of the culture of the English people. It was really, really tragic. So the original statue of Our Lady of Walsingham was, as I said, taken to Lambeth. And even there was an Elizabethan ballad about what had happened, and it was called A Lament for Walsingham. But here's the thing. There are no public records of anyone witnessing this event. And that's where things kind of get interesting.
Really?
Yes. So.
Oh, I thought someone said they burnt it right in front of the king, but maybe that wasn't true.
Well, yes, exactly. Well, sometimes what they would do is they would make fake statues. Go, oh yeah, here it is. This is the statue. And it was just like a very crude, mock-up of something. And they'd go, yeah, here, burn this. And in the meantime, they were doing something else with the real deal.
Okay.
And because they wanted, there were people who really, they wanted to preserve their Catholic faith. They wanted to preserve the Catholic culture in the country. It wasn't the Reformation here wasn't a grassroots movement by any stretch of the imagination. It was a top-down tyranny, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So now if you want to fast forward many, many centuries to the 23rd of December, 1925, the Victoria and Albert Museum purchased what was called the Langum Statue. And let's go now. Yes, so this is the Langum Statue, or the Langum Madonna. And they purchased it for £2.10 shillings. And the curator at the time was R.P. Bedford. And he purchased it believing that it came from Langum in Essex, from a church now destroyed. So the person who sold it to him said. And now this statement is believed to be a mistake, since there is a Langum in Norfolk and a Langum in Essex. Essex is down south. Norfolk is not quite as far south. Okay. And so, but the Langum in Norfolk is not very far from Walsingham. So if you go, I've got a little Google map, and I did this, Kathryn, because I know how much you love maps.
I do love maps.
Yeah. So here we go. So this is, if you look, there's Little Walsingham down at the lower left-hand side, and then just 6 miles away, you have Langum. It's like a 2 hour, 40-minute walk.
You put it as a walk. I was like, faster. Oh, is it a drive? No, that's a 2 hour walk. That's nothing.
No, 2 hour, it's 6 miles. 6 miles from one to the other. So this is why people were going, no, looking at that image, and when you consider, surprise. Let's go back to the
This one.
Can we go back to, let's go back to this one. So what's interesting about this is the Langum Hall in Walsingham was owned by the Rookwood family, and they were known, and this is important, they were known for hiding religious images and statues and having them smuggled out of the country during the Recuiscent era. And the vicar of Langham Hall, called John Grigby, was arrested in 1537 in the Walsingham conspiracy because he was part of a group that who was actively resisting the destruction of the Walsingham shrine. So people who lived around Walsingham were doing everything they could to resist the actions and the persecutions from the government. And, obviously, there were monks who lost their lives. The Rookwood family repeatedly were fined and put in jail. I think one of the members of the family actually, when Queen Elizabeth was visiting their manor home, a statue of Our Lady was discovered in a haystack, or like a wagon full of hay that he was trying to get out of Walsingham, and so he was fined very heavily, and I think he was jailed for that. So it's important to note that there were people close by in Walsingham at a place called Langham Hall who are on the record for being repeatedly jailed and fined for smuggling religious statues out of the country, or at least away from, or hiding them from the government. Yeah. And so the argument that there was a mistake about the provenance of the statue actually goes back to 1931. And an Anglican priest called Henry Joy Finns Clinton is quoted in the tablet as saying, and this is the quote, "Recently, there was discovered in an old house near Walsingham and sold an old wooden carved figure, apparently from the 12th century, which almost without any doubt is a copy of the Walsingham image, or even maybe think the original, saved perhaps as other relics and holy things by means of substitution being made for the purposes of satisfying the desecrators." Wow. So, and I think it's important also to note that this Walsingham is one of the few Anglican and Catholic pilgrimage shrines in the world. So it was the pilgrimages were definitely suppressed in this country, but some of them, they just really, people would do this secretly, even if they were members of the Church of England. They were still going to Walsingham to pay honor to Our Lady and to ask for her prayers, because it's also important to note that England was given the title, I believe it was Edward II, King Edward II, gave England the title of Our Lady's Dowry. And that means and legally, a dowry in England in medieval times was not, like we think, oh, it's a dowry. A daughter is like, brings all this money or property or whatever into a marriage. So a dowry legally in medieval England at this time was the property of the woman. And it was something that her father and her husband would set aside for her sake and for her use. And so that is what King Edward said England would be to Our Lady. And when you think about that, and when you think about what happened and what Henry VIII did, it makes it even more horrible, because it's something, not only did he take something away from our Lord, he took something away from Our Lady that had been given to her. Yeah. It's pretty serious stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I really hope this is the original. That would be so fascinating.
Well, let's see. This is what we're gonna look into. And so because of the questionable provenance of the statue at the V&A, they're hesitant to say whether or not the statue that they're in possession of is actually the statue of Our Lady of Walsingham. And if it is, this is the thing, if this is the statue, it is the most important holy image of medieval England. This is it. And it hasn't been carbon dated. And as far as I can tell, I don't think they're going to be making any efforts to further investigate whether or not it is actually the statue. There are a couple of things about it that, we can talk about that are different, because we're going to do a side-by-side comparison. And we can go into that a little bit later. And I have to say, if I'm going to be honest, I think that this actually is Our Lady of Walsingham. And my conclusions are based on the research that I did for this. And also I attended a lecture about it a few years back. And so I'm going to share with you, Kathryn, and our listeners, some of the evidence. And I want you to tell me what you think. Okay. I think it sounds like you're almost, you want it to be as well, don't you?
Well, it makes it more interesting. And she's, I like the statues that are the reproductions are really nice. This one just seems right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot about this one, and we can go into, there's just a lot of evidence, I think, pointing towards the fact that this is actually Our Lady. So the first thing that I want to kind of present as evidence, and this is not a court case, but this is just, this is my take on it.
Alix's evidence.
Exactly. So if you disagree with me, then please do let us know. But I actually did look to see if there were some things to counter this. And there were some, and we're going to go over what they are. But I just didn't think the case was very strong, if I'm going to be honest. So, so first,
before you start, do you want another image up?
There we go. Well, yeah. So people can really take a look at her. Let's see.
Need this one.
Here we go.
Do you need this image? Sorry.
I think this is the one. Okay. Sorry, this is the one that we want to do. So this is part of the evidence. So we have there are a number of English Catholic statues and sacred art that were smuggled out of the country if the locals caught wind of the government's plans to raid a convent or a church or monastery or guild, because of course the guilds had a lot of sacred art in them as well. And what would happen is the faithful would enlist Catholic merchants and diplomats from other parts of Europe who were sympathetic to the plight of English Catholics. And so there are English Catholic statues and other forms of sacred art in various churches and chapels and cathedrals all throughout Europe. And, there's a lot of, there's a paper trail supporting this practice. And if you take a look at this image of the Blessed Mother, this is called La Iglesia, and it is at the Montonedo Cathedral. Is that the right way to pronounce that, Kathryn?
It sounded good.
Okay, just go with it. So this is a statue that was, produced and carved in England. And it was smuggled out, maybe by a Spanish merchant, maybe by a Spanish diplomat. Who knows? But she's now in Spain. And I had mentioned, I don't know if I'd mentioned this on another podcast or not, but when we visited Poland, I went into a church in Poland, and I was surprised to see something that had words that I could actually read because they were in English. And then when I read, just the information about it, it was another, I want to say it was like part of an altarpiece that had been smuggled out of England during the Reformation, and it had been delivered in Poland. And they now have it in their church. So, this is something, if people have an opportunity to travel around Europe, if you ever spot some things that are English, you'll know how they got there, actually. So, what do you think of this one, Kathryn?
The difference in style is fascinating. Because first of all, she's got this surrounded by the angels at the bottom, so kind of a whole different feel. So, is this Our Lady, Queen of Angels, as opposed to, like a Our Lady of Walsingham type? But it's fascinating just to see the different styling and her hair and the elongation of her face. It's just something I'm used to seeing in like an English art style.
Exactly. But again, so many of the styles were destroyed and lost forever. We don't know what the styles would have looked like. And this one this is not from around Walsingham. This one is actually from St. Paul's Church in London. And I think it shows how the effort that people went through to preserve their the Catholicism of their country as best they could. One of the things that you will see in churches and cathedrals in this country, and I can't remember if we saw anything like this when you came over, Kathryn, but sometimes you'll see the stained glass windows and they're all jumbled up. It looks like a jigsaw puzzle, or it's really abstract. And I used to think, oh, what is that? Well, what it is people, when the medieval stained glass windows were smashed, people after the soldiers would leave, the iconoclasts would leave, people would sneak into churches and they would pick up pieces of the glass, and sometimes they were kept hidden in their house, because it wasn't, if something happened and someone came in their house and saw this evidence, it was really dangerous for them. And they kept it hidden, and sometimes they kept it hidden for centuries. And so when Catholicism became legal again, for example, the Winchester Cathedral, the front of that, the stained glass windows in the front, it looks very abstract, and but they were pieces of glass that families had held onto for centuries. And when it was legal again to be Catholic here, they brought them out and they put them back in the windows as best they could, which is extraordinary.
How many stories are out there. And I bet we'd have some viewers that could probably tell us some stories too on our Discord community. There's a gentleman at a parish I used to go to who, when they had to take down the old wooden church that was falling apart and having too many issues to repair, and they were building their new one, they had a few select pieces of stained glass they were going to reuse in the new one, but a lot of the others they didn't. And he ended up saying, "May I preserve these?" And he had them hanging all through his house and had saved different windows, which was really kind of neat. They had a few pieces that they had saved to put in a showcase for the school and things like that for the kids to see. These are what some of the original windows were. But I've also heard stories of people saying that, like in Cuba or in other countries where they had an authoritarian government come in, and they were scrambling as fast as they could to take windows and treasures out of the church, and people would bury them in their yards. And eventually, they're like hoping we got to bring this back out and bring the church back. So,
I mean, these were really, really dangerous times. Really dangerous times, and the fact that people risk so much to preserve what they knew was beautiful is so admirable. That speaks to the power of beauty, I think, and the power of sacred art when it's done well and it touches people in such a way that they're willing to risk everything to preserve it.
My mom's parish.
It's extraordinary.
One of the older ladies in the parish, during the 60s and 70s, when there were some, I'm just going to say it, renovations that has happened.
There you go. Yes.
She went in and she said, "I will take care of the statue of Our Lady from the side altar. If you don't want her anymore, I'm going to take care of her." And then when the church was being renovated and people were asking, "Do you have any of the items that were originally in the church?" she was very vehement that it was like, "I will let her go back into the church, but she will be honored. She will be put back where she was, and this is how it's supposed to be."
Exactly.
It's nice that there's little old ladies out there vehemently defending the art.
No, that's what you. Yeah. Absolutely. Especially Our Lady. Yeah, and so going back, it's when you think about, so somebody smuggling this out could have lost their lives. They could have lost their life trying to preserve this. And I think some people would go, "Oh, for a statue," but no, it's not just a statue. I mean, I know it's not. We're not idolaters here. Yes,
with the statue. And
No.
people lost their lives trying to defend her.
Absolutely.
And get her back.
Exactly. We're more than just eating and drinking and sleeping and working. You know, we're animals who love beauty, and it's worth risking your life for. So before we continue with this intriguing statue, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of sacred art, including Candace V, Pablo C, Wendy B, Amelia S, and Josh C. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of sacred art and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. To find previous episodes of Secrets of Sacred Art and to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/sacredart. You can email us at sacredart@sqpn.com or follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on X at SQPN, or join our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. And we try to be pretty active on Discord, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
It's a good, yeah. So join us on that. We have some interesting conversations sometimes. So now back to Our Lady. I think it would be helpful to go over the design of the statue to help people better understand what they're reading when they look at it. So here we go. Thank you, Kathryn.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good. So I was going to say, yeah, let's have her on the whole screen, not us. So one thing to really take note of is the Saxon crown and throne, and that denotes the queenship of Mary on the date of the founding of the shrine in 1061. So I will say this, the statue was donated and was made and donated in the 1100s, but the shrine itself was established in 1061. Okay. There's a threefold lily scepter, which means virginity and sovereignty. The 7 rings on the throne for the 7 sacraments. And Kathryn, we were just saying how it's hard to see the 7th.
Looking, yeah. Especially if you see the statue from the side. Your brain automatically goes, yeah, there's 3 and 3 on each side, or 4 and 4 on each side.
Exactly.
Gotta count the rings.
I know. So it's really interesting how they laid that out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And of course, Mary is pointing to Christ, and she's the seat of wisdom. So the back of the throne is an arch, and that denotes the rainbow, which is a sign of the covenant of God and between God and every living creature. The pillars on the sides of the throne are the house of God, the church. Christ is extending his arm in the double gesture of blessing and protection of his mother. And Christ is obviously sitting on her lap, and he's the Word of God. And you can see on her other lap, that's where you're supposed, Kathryn, that's where you're supposed to crawl up there when you're feeling a little bit sad or worried about something. See, she's got a nice big lap. You sit right there. And anybody else?
I had to giggle a little, though, when you talked about Christ having extended his arm in a double gesture of blessing and protection. Is that the origin of the mom safety arm when we're driving?
Yeah, I was just thinking.
And we throw our arm to protect our children.
That's true. Do you know, I literally was thinking of that myself. That is so funny. Great minds think alike. Oh, that's so funny. So, and then the last thing that we're actually going to talk about, which is really interesting, is there's at the bottom of the statue, or even underneath the statue, would be placed a toadstone, which is an East Anglian symbol of evil. And so toads, when you talk about sacred art and when you talk about the medieval mind and how they would kind of group things together, toads, snakes, dragons, all those like kind of creepy crawly things could symbolize evil or the snake. So she would be having this toadstone under her foot is really part of when in Genesis 3:15, God talks about her heel crushing the snake, or his heel will crush the head of the snake. So that's where that comes from. Yeah. And it's just a different way of grouping
makes me
things.
think about the plague of frogs.
Oh my gosh, don't.
Sorry. I know you hate frogs.
I don't hate them. I just don't want them around me. Yeah. So, so toadstones were quite, I had never heard of them before, because when I looked at this statue, I'm like, what are you talking about, a toadstone? But, but let's talk about the toadstone.
All right,
now,
so
one of the
look at what
features,
a toadstone is.
Yeah. So what is a toadstone? And I was weirdly having a conversation with somebody, and he thought he knew what a toadstone was. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I looked it up, and I actually found out what it was. So according to oxfordreference.com, a toadstone is a gem, fossil tooth, or some other stone formerly supposed to have been formed by the body of a toad. And it was credited with therapeutic and protective properties as well. But it's actually a fossilized tooth of a Jurassic fish. But they kind of, so it's like a semi-precious stone. I mean, I saw little images of people with rings made from them, but they kind of look like,
is those shiny black dot like things?
Round things. Okay. Yeah. And people would find them, I guess, and because they look like toad eyes or something, they called them toadstones. And the original statue of Our Lady of Walsingham had a toadstone in it, placed in the wood. And what's interesting is the Langford Madonna, so this is the one that's at the V&A, had a wedge chiseled out of the bottom of it, and it looks like it's a space. In that space would have been a toadstone, would have fit beautifully in that space, but it has been removed. Yeah. So that's another thing to kind of support. This statue is something. What is this? Yeah, I just think that's further evidence that that maybe it is the original. And also, I should say, the back of that statue, there are 6 holes that look like it would hold a dowel rod that would support the back of a large throne.
Oh, okay.
So the throne is gone. So like I said, we'll do a side by side, but
should we look at that now, or?
Okay. Yeah. Because so I couldn't find any side by side comparisons of a modern statue with Our Lady, with the, of Our Lady of Walsingham and the Langum Madonna. And so I made it myself. And if you look, and, just really kind of take in a lot of the similarities here. So the one on the right is, our family's statue that was given to us by a priest's friend, the late Father Santos. Please say a prayer for him. He was a wonderful, wonderful priest who brought us into the church, and he gave us this extraordinary statue, which is about, I want to say 14 inches high. It's quite heavy. It's not something you can pick up with one hand, or at least I can't. And he found this statue in a Carmelite monastery that was being closed. The only information he had about it was that it was carved from a single piece of oak in either the 1930s or 1940s, and it was made in England, but it's unsigned. Mm-hmm. And so I think this kind of goes back to after World War II, there was a revival to the devotion of Our Lady of Walsingham in the UK and the United States. And that's thanks to the US military forces who were over here, who kind of started reviving this devotion. And I think this statue might have been part of that revival. Okay. But what's interesting is the modern images of Our Lady of Walsingham are not based on the statue of Our Lady of the Langum Madonna. It's actually based on stamps and seals, medieval stamp records of from Walsingham. So they would have like the wax seals. There we go. So this is what the this is what the modern day Our Lady of Walsingham statues would be based upon, not on the Langum Madonna. And so if we can go back to the side-by-side comparison, one of the things that is obviously missing is the crown. But Our Lady of Walsingham, the original one, was given a crown as a gift by Edward III, and it was a gold crown, and it was like a band, so it was opened at the back, and so it would sit on top of the head of the statue, and it was held there like by tension, and this statue has almost like all around her head a very narrow shelf where you would put, and it looks like something is made, so it's really smooth. It's almost like it's unfinished, but you could just like slot something on top of it, and it would rest on this band, this very narrow ledge around her face.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's intentionally carved to hold a golden crown.
Yeah. And the other thing that is missing is her veil or her wimple. But it was believed, and this happened a lot, it could have been real cloth and not carved wood. And, you do see statues of either, especially the infant Christ or Our Lady, and they will dress them in fabrics. And so it was believed that possibly the veil would have been put on with, real cloth, and then the gold crown band would then hold that veil in place. So that's the difference. But if you look at, I think you can see, now I don't know if this is the wedge they're talking about at the front. Well, that would make sense. So if you look right at the bottom, I said it was in the back, but now that I'm looking at it, it looks like it might even be in the front. So that's been chiseled away, but that's where the toadstone would have been originally. And if you look on either side of the Langum Madonna's chair, you can see a couple of the dowels that are still in place, whereas something else, something larger would have been behind her, and the dowels are there to kind of add support to it. Now, I did go see this image. I did go see this statue in the V&A. I go there whenever I go to the V&A. Always go and say a little prayer in front of it. Nice. But if you can walk around it in the display case. I didn't use any of my pictures because they're just not worth it, because they're not very good. But if you go around the back of the statue, it's quite flat. So there's definitely something butting up against the back of the statue. So like a lot of that
should have been there.
Exactly. And so what are your thoughts? I'd like to hear some of your ideas about what we see here.
How big it is.
It is about the same size as mine. It's about 14 inches tall. Yeah. So, like maybe a little smaller. Yeah.
Not too big, not too small. Obviously, it looks like it's carved from a solid piece of wood. Is it wood?
It's made out of oak. Yeah, it's made out of oak. Yeah. Very nice. So they could carbon date it, but I think they've just decided not to. And of course, the position of Christ is different. So this is another reason why at the V&A they're saying, well, we can't say for sure that it's the statue of Our Lady of Walsingham. And one of the reasons is A, the crown is missing. B, Christ's hand. Well, he's kind of more facing forwards, and the and then the reproduction, the modern reproductions of it, he's sitting to the side. In the Langum Madonna one, his arm is actually completely touching her chest, whereas in the modern ones it's coming out, it's more three-dimensional. And of course we don't know what his head looks like because it's gone. But so in
But
some
wouldn't
ways,
that be a way to try to camouflage what the statue really is by, having Christ's head knocked off, and then also Our Lady's arm is missing its scepter.
oh yeah, definitely the scepter. Yeah, see, yes, that's the thing. So there's a little bit there's some differences between the modern statue of Our Lady of Walsingham and the Langum Madonna, but I don't know why you would hold the standards of a 12th century statue to a modern reproduction. That seems a little strange to me. I would think it would be the other way around. But now the other thing that they could do is they could actually do carbon dating of the statue.
Mm-hmm.
And that would maybe lend a little more legitimacy to whether or not it is Our Lady of Walsingham, but they're not going to do that. Yeah, so they've just said no, they're not going to do any of that. Obviously the clothing is a little bit different, but
after looking at different images, as we were preparing for this and looking at different images of Our Lady of Walsingham, there are quite a few that look more like was it Landingham? No.
Langham.
Because
so it's Walsingham, so they don't say the H. So it's Walsingham and Langham.
Yeah. So
except when the H is pronounced,
There's a few, variations out there in the copies, especially modern copies.
Yeah.
And some look more like this one. So, there's some possibilities there.
You just never know. And as I said, I'm not quite sure why the reasoning behind, because this 11th or 12th century statue is not looking like the replicas of Our Lady of Walsingham. Therefore, it's not the Our Lady of Walsingham because it's not matching up with something. I just think that is an odd approach, but it's the approach that it is. And but I think there's a little bit of a victory, which we talked about at the very beginning about this. Now, I do really think this is Our Lady of Walsingham. I really do. And but the repercussions of iconoclasm that took place in Great Britain under the heavy hand of Henry VIII and Thomas Cromwell have really followed us all the way down to our own times, in ways that we really, we're still kind of living in that sea of the Reformation. And so we don't know how it's changed us. Even as Catholics, we don't know. And, and I do actually think the statue is destined to remain at the V&A. For a very long time. I don't have any confidence that they're going to go, oh, do you know what? Maybe this is Our Lady of Walsingham and we'll send it back to Walsingham. And actually, I don't know if Walsingham isn't pressing in any way the Monsignor who's down there. I think if there is a Monsignor down there now, I don't think there's no pressure or any kind of active movement to bring it back to Walsingham. So it's going to be in the V&A for a long time. But I think it's worth paying Our Lady a visit. If you ever go to London and find yourself at the V&A. And I actually think, Our Lady is just Our Lady. And maybe when you go and visit her, you can have a little bit of a chuckle at a very clever joke that she's played on all of the efforts to have her taken away from her rightful place, which is her dowry. Now, this statue sits very comfortably, staring out a window staring out the window of Cromwell Street, which is where the V&A is located. So Henry VIII is gone and Thomas Cromwell they're long gone, but Our Lady of Walsingham is just sitting very calmly and quietly in the heart of London. And
and her image has traveled wide and far and inspired
Yes.
so many people in different places. Like,
Yeah.
I want to share one beautiful thing. So there is a cathedral of Our Lady of Walsingham. This is in Texas.
Yeah. That's extraordinary.
So this is their courtyard. So they have a beautiful outdoor courtyard image with Our Lady of Walsingham in there. You know, great way to contemplate Our Lady. But the inspiration for this came from these stained glass windows that they have in the cathedral. And this cathedral was established under the 1984 pastoral provision of St. John Paul II. So this is the first Catholic parish of the United States to be dedicated to Our Lady under Our Lady of Walsingham.
Oh my gosh. Beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah, so this was actually set up in the ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter. And the group that is, you know, now fully into the Catholic Church and, you know, just inspired by Our Lady.
Yeah. Do you know, we almost were part of that group of the ordinariate because we were part of an Anglican, we were part of a high Anglican group that, that was preparing to leave, but we were too impatient. We wanted to be Catholic. We didn't want to wait until the whole thing made it officially because, so we rushed in, I think I want to say like maybe 6 months, maybe a year before everything became official. So she is
this
again
was official in 2016. The church was officially designated as a cathedral, and it was in 2012 that they were able to establish this chair of, the ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter was established.
Okay,
in
so no, this was
2012.
okay. No, but this was there was something else that happened, like maybe the first wave, and we were just like, no, we want to be Catholic now, and so we went through I almost said ROTC. Oh my gosh, what is it? RCIA.
There you go.
As kind of like an individual family to be brought into the church. So that was a couple of years before all of this, but it is amazing. She's so beautiful. I hope people, I hope we did her justice, Kathryn, because I find such comfort and such inspiration from this lady. She knows how to endure, and her faith and her strength come through in this image of her, because do you know what? She looks hefty. Do you know what I mean? Like she looks like she can get up and she can do stuff. She's not delicate looking. This is what I love about this image of Our Lady of Walsingham. She really is quite, she looks like she knows how to get things done. And like I said, she's got that big lap. If ever you're sad, you just crawl up there. She'll, she's, and you know what else? Just to add something, do you know our kitten loves sitting next to Our Lady of Walsingham. He's so cute on the windowsill. Oh my gosh. He sits, he like snuggles right next to it. Like, look at me. So she definitely has, our whole family is just in love with her. And I really want to encourage people to find out as much information as you can. Go through the show notes, watch that it's just a 30-minute documentary, but there's so much in it. And think about coming. I tell you what, the next time you come over, we're going to have to go to Walsingham.
Yeah.
You can walk the final mile barefooted. That's the tradition.
Oh, I like doing that. Barefoot's my thing.
There you go. So you can do it. You can do it. That's not a penance for you, right? But
no, it's a joy.
But exactly. Yeah. So this is a final picture. This is Our Lady of Walsingham, and one of the things I do want to do with this is I'd like to thank a dear friend of mine, Kati Sheehan, and she's kind of given us a couple of photographs and images for us to use in in our podcast about churches, but she did a lot of research for us in this podcast, and she's our sacred art sleuth. And the research that Kathryn and I do for this podcast is pretty heavy, and it's on top of all of the other things we're doing. And so it's kind of nice to have a little helper. And so now that we have this little sleuth helping us, we can have time to maybe delve into some other interests, because there's so much that Kathryn and I want to do, and so much we want to share with people, and we're just looking at the research that we have to do and everything else we have to do in our lives. So now that we have a sleuth to help us from time to time, that's just going to help us bring more to our listeners and viewers, and it kind of makes me feel like our podcast is starting to be official. It's like, we got a little sleuth. We're going to have to come up with, I don't know, like a special little badge if we have some other helpers over time. So if there might be people who are out there who might just, like an hour or two to help us find some images and stuff, let us know.
Anyone who sends us good ideas on Discord, we'll have to do a little graphic for a sleuth badge for people who give us some great ideas on Discord.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I said, the more it's interesting, people, when they find images and you bring them in and you go, oh my gosh, that's amazing. One of the other things I wanted to add about Our Lady of Walsingham, or actually the Walsingham Shrine, which I didn't know until I started doing research on this. Did you know that it's a minor basilica?
Oh, nice.
I know. Yes.
So this is also one of our breathtaking basilicas.
There you go. There you go.
You might have to update the basilica breakdown or breakdown basilica or whatever, or whatever we were saying.
Yes. Exactly. But yeah, so we did a nice deep dive on basilicas, and so if you listened and watched that one, you'll know what it is that makes a basilica. Now, this is a minor basilica, which I actually don't know what that is. Maybe it's the size.
Most are minor basilicas. There's only a few major basilicas.
Okay.
So even St. Anne was a minor basilica. Yep.
Okay, so there's a connection with Our Lady of Walsingham and St. Anne, which of course is completely appropriate, right?
Oh yeah,
mother and grandmother. Yeah. Yep, so, So there you go. So I hope everyone, give us your thoughts, and what do you think? Honestly, what do you think about this statue of of the Langum Madonna? Do you think it's the real?
It's possible. It's possible.
Our Lady of Walsingham.
It's possible. I want to hear what other people think. Chime in, take a close
I know,
look,
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you go ahead. You go ahead.
And please follow The Secrets of Sacred Art in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Oh, we are Fuller Experience. You know where to watch us on YouTube, right?
Exactly.
So to find previous episodes of The Secrets of Sacred Art, send feedback to sqpn.com/sacredart. You can email us at sacredart@sqpn.com, and find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on Twitter at SQPN, or on the Discord community. Join us at sqpn.com/Discord. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing military travel altars, mass on the hood of a Jeep.
That's going to that's going to be cool. Yeah.
That's going to be cool.
Sorry.
It's going to be way cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So until then, thank you for joining us on The Secrets of Sacred Art. I'm Kathryn Laffrey.
And I'm Alix Murray. We hope you find something beautiful. Bye-bye.